so much actually happened at the end of this week. So I want to get right into some of these really big Bitcoin headlines that are developing and making people really excited about Twitter. So first of all, I hope that everyone saw the clip of Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen's interview on CNBC. This was very, very bullish for Bitcoin. I think it probably caused the spike over $45,000 today. She said, quote, "Crypto has grown by leaps and bounds and is now playing a significant role in the investment decisions of lots of Americans. We would like to create a regulatory environment in which healthy innovation can continue." And she referenced the executive order on crypto that was recently signed by President Joe Biden that she supported. And this is a positive turnaround because just about a year ago, I don't know if you saw her on programs calling Bitcoin, quote, "extremely inefficient," and warning about the dangers that crypto posed to both the public and investors. So if you haven't seen those clips, you can head to Squawk Box from CNBC. They posted it, and also MicroStrategy CEO Michael Saylor reshared it. Meanwhile, we also heard from Senator Cynthia Lummis this week. She is one of the biggest Bitcoin proponents in Washington, D.C., and she is pairing with Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, who's actually a Democrat, so this is going to be bipartisan, working on legislation that aims to give the industry regulatory clarity. This is something I know institutions are crying out for, and this was announced at a Politico Live event last night. Gillibrand said that the legislation would create a framework that addresses safety and soundness, consumer protections, and certainty for markets. So again, really bullish news. And in other big news this week, we saw headlines about a Russian lawmaker who said the nation could accept Bitcoin for oil or natural gas payments. Now, this isn't an official statement from Vladimir Putin, but this lawmaker said this during a press conference, and we saw Bitcoin surge past $44,000 shortly after the statements were made public. And this development is really something that a lot of prominent Bitcoiners have been forecasting for a long time. One of my favorite voices in the space is author Jeff Booth, who wrote The Price of Tomorrow. He's been talking about oil eventually being priced in Bitcoin for a long time. So I highly recommend checking out his work and forecasts. But anyway, the lawmaker, his name is Pavel Zavalny. He made the comment during a news conference and said that Bitcoin could be one alternative that Russia could accept as payment for oil and other commodities. And he added that amid sanctions, Russia could essentially sell gas to the West for rubles and gold. He distinguished between how Russia would transact with friendly versus unfriendly countries. And he said that Bitcoin is a possible payment rail as well. So I was looking at some of the translations online, and the most common one said that Zavalny said, quote, "We've been offering China to switch to transacting in national currencies such as the ruble and the renminbi for a while now. With Turkey, that would be the lira and ruble. Currency sets can be different. It's a common practice. If it would be necessary to trade with Bitcoin, we'd do it." And he went on to say during that press conference that Western currencies have turned into candy wrappers and that Russia has lost interest in euros and dollars. So again, that puts a spotlight on some of the things we've talked about in previous shows, which is that the global financial system that's pegged by the US dollar being the global reserve currency seems to be fracturing and crumbling. So not long after that headline out of Russia, we saw another bullish development for Bitcoin on the oil front. ExxonMobil is going to be running a pilot project to supply flared gas for Bitcoin mining. This is gas that would otherwise be wasted from North Dakota oil wells. And due to the lack of pipelines, it would have otherwise been basically burned off or flared, which is not good for the environment. So Bitcoin's ability to capture that stranded energy is, of course, one of the key innovations and competitive advantages of this industry. Exxon is not the first company to move in this direction. We saw ConocoPhillips announced a similar move recently, and both companies are working on reducing emissions to comply with the World Bank Zero Routine Flaring by 2030 initiative. Last thing I want to touch on, let's get an update from El Salvador. President Bukele took to Twitter reacting to the news that the U.S. Senate Foreign Relations Committee passed the proposed ACES Act that stands for Accountability for Cryptocurrency in El Salvador, and it's now heading to a full Senate vote. Bukele posted part of the bill on his Twitter page saying, quote, "Never in my wildest dreams would I have thought that the U.S. government would be afraid of what we are doing here." Now, the bill, if you're not familiar with it, not a lot of people thought it would pass out of committee, but it aims at mitigating the risks that some U.S. policymakers feel that El Salvador's adoption of Bitcoin poses to the U.S. financial system. And you might recall that back when this bill was first introduced, Bukele tweeted, quote, okay, boomers, you have zero jurisdiction on a sovereign and independent nation. Don't try to control something you can't control. So he's doubling down on that sentiment. He basically said that the US doesn't stand for freedom and that that's a proven fact. So they're going to stand for freedom, game on. And he called Bitcoin FU money. And I think we're going to be seeing a lot more news from El Salvador in the coming weeks. You know, Bukele is getting ready to speak at the Bitcoin conference in Miami, where Abra is going to be. So we'll be sure to be listening to that announcement. He also just hosted the CEO of Binance. And right now he has Mexican billionaire Ricardo Salinas in town. So he's got a lot going on as he prepares to launch that $1 billion Bitcoin bond offering, which has been delayed. It was supposed to be released in mid-March, but his administration is claiming that the law hasn't gone to Congress yet because they're prioritizing pension reform. So those are the biggest stories. And it's really been an interesting week because a lot of the biggest headlines came, just in the last 2 days.